Hey guys, welcome to the first part of our meiosis notes. We're going to have a couple sets of notes on meiosis because it is a complex topic. And the first part of meiosis that we're going to be talking about is variation. Variation means that there are differences. So we could talk about variation within our own DNA. You can talk about variation within a population, meaning you have lots of different characteristics or traits within a population, and you can have variation on a higher level. So let's start talking about variation within an organism and within populations, and what it has to do with meiosis. So here, let's go over some vocab. Starting off, so let's talk about humans. We humans are made of two different types of cells. The first one is body cells. So all of the cells in your body are called somatic cells. So the prefix soma, let me underline this, the prefix soma means body. So when you hear somatic cells, that means body cells. And pretty much all of the cells that you can think of, these are all with your arm cells, your muscle cells, your brain cells, those are body cells. They make up your body. And all of your body cells, or your somatic cells, have the full genetic complement, meaning you have 46 chromosomes. So if N means the number, N is going to represent the number of chromosomes that are in a sex cell. So if we have 2n equals 46, that means that we have 46 chromosomes in our body cells or our somatic cells. This will become more clear in a moment, so stick with me. So let's look at a somatic cell. So this doesn't necessarily have 46 chromosomes. It's going to have it's a plant cell. Here we can tell that it's square, it's green. But we can look at the difference between a somatic cell and a gamete, or a sex cell, which is the other type of cell we're made of. So a somatic cell is going to have two pairs, or a pair or two sets of each chromosome. So you have two first chromosomes, one from mom, one from dad, two second chromosomes, one from mom, one from dad. And so we have 23 pairs of chromosomes, or 46 altogether. So we can see here our somatic cell, we see that we have pairs of each of the chromosomes. Whereas sex cells, these are going to be also known as gametes, also known as sperm or egg. This is the second type of cell that you're made of. So we have somatic cells and we have sex cells. And our sex cells are a little bit different than our body cells. Our sex cells have half the number of chromosomes. So we see here that in the somatic cell we have two first chromosomes, two second chromosomes, two third chromosomes. And if we look at the sex cell, the sperm or the egg, we have one first chromosome, one second chromosome, one third chromosome. So we have half the number of chromosomes. These are haploid cells, whereas somatic cells are diploid cells. So let me put that here. Oh, it's not going to let me type it in. So these are diploid cells, and the sex cells are haploid cells. So N equals 23. So if there's 23 chromosomes in our sex cells, or our gametes, then 2N is going to be 46. So that should start to make a little bit more sense now. So the function of meiosis is to produce cells and variation. So to produce sex cells. So during meiosis, the number of chromosomes in a somatic cell are halved. H-A-L-V-E-D, are cut in half. So here, let me get my draw tool. And going to make this size. So here we have 2n or we have 46 chromosomes. So we have in here, in our nucleus, we're going to have, let me get some red. So let's just draw a couple of chromosomes, not all 46. We'll draw a couple of pairs. So here's one chromosome from mom. Here's another chromosome from mom. And we have the same, so here's a first chromosome from dad and a second chromosome from dad. So here if we had 23 red X's and 23 blue X's, so 23 from mom and 23 from dad, that would be 46 chromosomes. This is what we have at the beginning. We have a diploid cell. We have a diploid cell. So di meaning two, we have twice as much, diploid cell. We start off with one somatic diploid cell. And when we end, so at the beginning of meiosis, this is what we have. And at the end of meiosis, what we have is we have four haploid cells. So we're going to have that are genetically brand new and different. So we're going to have 1, 2, 4. And so those aren't all from dad. So each of these cells have a chromosomes that are a little bit of mom and a little bit of dad. They're half mom, half dad. And so variation has happened. So if it was mitosis, it would be identical copies. But these are not identical copies. In each of these cells, there's a little bit of mom and a little bit of dad. And so at the end of meiosis, we end up with 4 haploid cells, or 4 sex cells. 4 haploid cells. And so if we want to remember this might help is if we put a little tail on here like 4 sperm. So we start with 1 somatic cell and we end with 4 sex cells or 4 haploid cells that are genetically variable, meaning that they're different from this original cell. They're genetically different. There's a little bit of mom and a little bit of dad. So why do we have HALVE, the amount of genetic material in cells, in our sex cells? Well, let's say that this is an egg from mom, and there are 23 chromosomes in here, because remember our sex cells have half the genetic material. And here's a sperm, and it has 23 chromosomes. During fertilization, the sperm is going to enter the egg, and they're going to combine, and then we get 46 chromosomes. So if we did not have HALVE, the amount of genetic material in our sex cells, then it would continue to double and double and double until we had so much DNA in a zygote or in a fertilized egg that it wouldn't be able to fit in the nucleus. So we cut it in half. So we say that this is N plus N equals 2N. If you want to take a screenshot of this and add this to your notes, that would be a pretty good idea. And so right here we have a fertilized egg. And another word, there's another weird word that represents fertilized egg, and that's a zygote. A zygote is a fertilized egg. And once you have a fertilized egg, so we have a haploid plus a haploid, or a sex cell plus a sex cell, when they fertilize, it becomes a diploid cell. So haploid plus haploid equals diploid. Or this becomes, so it's diploid. So some different words that we can use to represent this. Diploid. I'll just put diploid. But it's also, since it's diploid, it's also a, it's a horrible diploid. It's also a somatic cell. It is a somatic cell. So here, a haploid plus a haploid makes a diploid. or a sex cell plus a sex cell makes a somatic cell. And so variation in a population is important because it allows the population to adapt to changes in the environment. If we were all identical copies, which is the product of asexual reproduction, if we were all exactly the same, then we would be less likely to survive changes in our environment. So if we look at this example here, we have 3 giraffes that all have different sized necks. There's variation in this population. So some are taller, some are shorter. Some have longer legs, some have shorter legs. Some have longer necks, some have shorter necks. So there's variation. And this is important because if all of the, let's say, bottoms of the branch, let's say a big fire went through and burned off all of the low branches in a forest, then what would happen to the short giraffes? The short giraffes would die off. However, the tall giraffes would survive. And so the population is able to survive a change in the environment. Remember that a population can adapt, but not an individual. So a giraffe did not get taller because there was only leaves on the trees. The short giraffes died because they didn't have access to food. The taller giraffes survived, and so therefore the population survived, but at the expense of the shorter giraffes. And so it's really important that we have different characteristics in a population, so that we have some tall giraffes and we have some short giraffes and we have giraffes with different colored spots on it to help some camouflage or some stand out. So the more traits you have in a population, the more likely it is that that population will be able to survive. Random fertilization. So there are 3 ways in which variation is introduced during meiosis and sexual reproduction. The first way is called random fertilization. Random fertilization is the staggering number of different ways that our DNA can be combined. So if you think about what are the chances that the DNA from the sperm from your father and the DNA from your mother's egg came together. It's mind-blowingly small, the chances of that to happen. So think about this. There are 8 billion people on Earth. 4 billion people of the opposite sex. So during sexual reproduction, 280 million sperm are produced. And it has the option or the opportunity to potentially interact with thousands of eggs in a female. And so all of the different combinations of the male genetic material being combined with the female genetic material is staggering. It's unbelievable the number of different ways that the DNA can come together during sexual reproduction. And so we call this random fertilization, that there are many, many, many different ways that DNA can come together and produce new traits. New traits are very important. We want lots of traits in a population, new characteristics, short, tall, different colored hair, different rate at which you grow, different skin color, because all of these things are going to potentially help us to survive changes in the environment. Another way that variation is introduced during meiosis. Before I actually get into the second one, I want to give you some key vocabulary terms. Homologous chromosomes. This is a tough word. Homologous. Don't be afraid of it. Say it out loud. Homologous. So homologous chromosomes are corresponding chromosomes. So if we look here, we have 2 first chromosomes. One from mom, one from dad. These are corresponding. These are homologous chromosomes. So homo means same. So why is it the same? Well, because if let's say that the trait for eye color is right here on this chromosome, and it might be for blue eyes, well then we have the eye color trait over here on dad. And if you have, and it could be for brown eyes, it's a different version, but it's still the same gene. And if we have the trait for, I don't know, how big your front teeth are right here, then we have that same gene right here. So these have the same genes. We have different versions of that gene. So this might be your teeth grow really fast and your teeth grow really slow, but the speed at which your teeth grow, which is a really weird trait, I don't know why I thought of that, is here. So these are homologous chromosomes. These are homologous chromosomes. These are homologous chromosomes. So our pairs of chromosomes. So the second way in which variation is introduced during meiosis is during metaphase 1. Homologous chromosomes line up independent of one another. So we're going to have 23 chromosomes from mom and 23 from dad. And eventually the cell is going to split. But some of these cells from mom are going to be on one side and some are going to be on the other side. So let me get my blue. Oops, here we go. So some of dad's are on this side. Some of dad's are on this side. Some of dad's are on this side. And so when this splits, and we know how a cell splits because we've already studied mitosis. So when the cell splits down in half, this cell is going to have some of mom and some of dad. This cell is going to have some of mom and have some of dad. Something genetically brand new, something that's never existed before. And that is variation. There's going to be new traits coming out of that. Finally, our last slide, and the last way that variation is passed on during meiosis. This is called crossing over, and crossing over happens during prophase 1. So we know, so let's draw our cell, and I'm just going to draw one cell from mom, or one chromosome from mom. Let me do 2. And then we know that they've assorted independent of each other, so some will be on one side and some will be on the other side. And here, what's going to happen during prophase 1 is that these homologous chromosomes are going to come close together, and they're going to wrap around each other so tightly that they actually swap genetic information. They actually swap segments of DNA. So there's going to be some blue over here, and over here, and over here, and then there's going to be some red over here, and over here, and over here. And the same is going to happen over here. Let's put this here, and here, and let me grab the blue. I'm almost done. There's going to be blue over here and here. So when this cell divides, we've got, not only do we have some DNA from mom and some DNA from dad because they assorted independently, but we have a whole, we have recombined DNA, meaning that that some of the genes are swapped over. So this is even more variation. This is brand new traits that have never come about before. And so this is going to help to create variation in a population. So I hope this helps, and I will talk to you guys soon.